Hi, so welcome to Virtually Connecting, and this is our third and final session from the Association for Learning Technology Conference 2019 in Edinburgh. It's been a particularly busy conference, as alt conferences always are, but lots and lots of ripples coming through Twitter and in the virtual sphere as well. So delighted to get this opportunity to speak to the folks on site, get their impressions of the conference, encourage them to tell us a little bit more about what's been going on at altc. So we're going to come straight to the on-site participants before us. Maybe you could start off just by telling us a little bit about yourselves. So who would like to start?
I start. Go for it. Yeah. So hi, can you see? Yeah. Hi, I'm Sheila McNeil. I'm the chair of alt. And oh, have I got to go?
Yeah, we can't see. Yay!
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to do it through a shoe tweet for a moment there.
Some big shoes actually in the room.
Really?
I'm chair of alt, and I've been helping Teresa and Rich in the corner hidden away to virtually connect this week. Yeah, so I'm going to go to Peter, our surprise guest.
Surprise guest. I'm Peter Bryant. I'm the Associate Dean of Education at the University of Sydney Business School, and I'm also a trustee of alt. So that's my story.
I'm Sam Taylor. I'm an e-learning specialist at Catalyst IT. So I advise on the use of Google and Hara for education, but before that, I'm also learning technology. I've just done 2 more workshops.
I'm Anne-Marie Scott. I'm the Deputy Director of Learning and Teaching Web here at Edinburgh. So I look after all Edinburgh's online learning platforms, and most of my team and most of my colleagues are at this conference because it's right outside our door.
I'm Keith Sloan. I'm head of the Learning and Teaching Academy at the University of the Highlands and Islands. I'm also the co-chair of this year's conference. And as of last evening, we registered a call to
No, it makes you my vice. But I might not what I should probably shouldn't have said that. It's on the internet now.
We'll edit that out.
We may need to get you just a little closer to the mic because the sound is a little bit, it's very echoey actually in your room. So we're not necessarily here. Thank you. Sorry about that.
The disembodied voice off the screen. I'm Richard. I'm an ex-primary school teacher, an ex-senior learning technologist, and now for my sins they call me a developer. I still think of myself as a teacher and educator who dabbles with things rather than anything else.
Anne-Marie, did I miss your introduction?
No, you got me.
Right, do we have everybody? Is there anybody else off screen? Wonderful, thank you. Great, okay, so I'm going to come to the folk who are joining us off-site. So Scott, maybe you could start off and tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're joining us.
So I'm Scott Turner, Principal Lecturer in Computing at Northampton. I've been watching a few of the sessions and I was on the committee, but I couldn't make it up. And so, I've just been enjoying what I could watch and what I could see at the conference.
Brilliant, thanks Scott. And Chris, this is your first Virtually Connecting session, so big welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Chris Jobling. I'm a Senior Lecturer and Programme Director at Swansea University. I went to my first alt conference last year in Manchester. I'd been before, but it's the first one I've been for a line, but I couldn't make it this year. I was on the programme committee though, so I did review some of the papers. And I've been obviously following as much as I could. Of course, if you're off-site, you've got a lot of other things to be doing as well. So a lot of multitasking this week.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Chris, but you know, when I've been seeing and hearing all these tales of Kayleys and meetups in pubs and things, I'm thinking, oh, there's something missing about the conference experience from what I can pick up just on Twitter. But
yes, I wanted some Lego.
Yeah, yes, me too. Oh, look, we have a duck. Excellent. So I'm Teresa McKinnon. I'm at Warwick Language on Twitter, and I follow and have conversations with all of you. And some of you I've met in real life. And Sam, I think I met at Mahara conferences for the first time some 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. So yeah, it's really great to have us all together in this one virtual room. So you're coming to the end of what is always a really busy virtual conference, the real conference. So let's pass on to the virtual world. Some of your highlights, maybe. Can you tell us what have been the highlights for you of the conference?
Well, for me, of the ones I managed to see, the ones I managed to actually get a chance to look at, I quite enjoyed Susanna Faulkner's talk about what she's been doing with her students, how she's been linking that with Snapchat and the Bitmojis. It's no surprise that I like Bitmojis. And the two keynotes that I saw yesterday and Sue Beck's is one, I enjoyed those. Certainly the second one yesterday I thought was quite thought-provoking about Turnitin, and well, not just Turnitin, but that whole idea and about trusting our students, really.
That's brilliant, Scott, because it just shows that those of us who haven't been physically present also feel that we've experienced the conference. I think I saw Francis just arriving on site there. Yay! So Francis, perhaps you could just, if you can reach the mic or get a little bit closer to the mic, tell us, just introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us of the wonders of alt. I don't think we can hear you at all at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. It's on a string. Right.
I'm Frances Bell, not currently in, or not ever again in gainful employment, and but I've over the last few years, more to do with OER conferences, but also to do with altc. And I'm so honoured yesterday to get an honorary lifetime membership award. And it's important to say that I'm sure that is not in least part due to FemEdTech. So it really is sharing it, but you'll have to pay for your own membership, I'm afraid. But you can share the glory. And it's really been great to talk to lots of delegates about FemEdTech. And we've already got 2 really interesting things in the pipeline as a result. So,
brilliant. Well deserved. Well deserved.
At FemEdTech, that's all you need to know.
Thanks. So maybe we can come to our on-site conference folk. What are your takeaways from the conference?
Lego.
Lego. Physical takeaways. Wow.
My one has been the same one that I've had in previous years, and it links very well, I think, to CMOS and to the work that Alt are doing in professionalisation of learning technologists. And I'm still going to a lot of sessions where people are talking about and senior management, these other people in the institution who are making decisions which are challenging on the ground in terms of learning and teaching. And we need, for my money, we need more learning technologists at senior levels in institutions. And this is part of that professionalisation journey. It is a proper job. It's not a weird, strange thing. Technology in education is very much a mainstream part of our institutions now. It's not a thing on the side that we're still playing with and experimenting, but I don't feel that we've really dealt with mainstreaming the professional role of the learning technologist in the institution. And so I've seen so many fabulous presentations, but I've heard this refrain over and again about senior management and that I think is a problem and a challenge. We wouldn't buy a network without a network specialist in the room, but I see still in a lot of institutions we buy educational technology without a learning technologist in the room. That's just bonkers. I mean, that just doesn't make sense in any kind of way. So I think over and above the really great ideas I've had and I've seen about particular technologies or particular practices, for me that's been the theme and the challenge I think
think that's been an increasing presence in all conferences in the last couple of years, the challenge of that existential crisis of what actually is the role of a learning technologist. And it sometimes gets wrapped up, and there's been a few presentations that have had it wrapped up in the debate between whether it's a learning technologist or a learning designer and all the kind of labeling stuff, which doesn't actually help progress the debate along to any great degree. But there's been an increasing number of sessions that have been talking about how learning technologists can empower themselves to be productive and useful voices in the narrative in their own institutions. And I think that I've seen that starting to come through a lot more. And I think the more we support that strategic development of learning technologists, and sure, that strategic development is always going to be built on practice. It's always going to be built on having skin in the game. It's always going to be built on expertise gained through doing things. But the more we build that capacity, the better we actually will position and locate the sort of, your exact point, locate the expertise in choosing these systems and deciding what is the best pedagogical use for them, as opposed to having them imposed upon us.
And ongoing the management of them. I thought Jessie's keynote yesterday was particularly good in that it talked about how to continue to influence EdTech companies. And I should say there are other alternatives to buying EdTech, I'll just put that out there as well. But there is a kind of ongoing supplier management element as well. So it's not just about being in the room when things are chosen, but it's about once you're in bed with a particular vendor, how do you continue ongoing? And I think again, we're not in a lot of institutions not agree as well. So it's actually getting involved in writing. Yes. Yeah, it just feels
Could we just get that mic a bit closer? Sorry, we're losing you, Sam. And I'm interested particularly because last week I was in Belgium at Eurocall and we were having this very discussion about what is a learning technologist. And when I first came to ALT in 2011, I was a practitioner. Like Richard, I would always consider myself a teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher. That's what I've done for 30 years. But I come to this as a teacher with a learning technology qualification. And, you know, I think it's quite important as well that as a body of learning technologists, we're very inclusive. We're not only thinking of learning technologists who perhaps are based within an academic technology unit, but people who are practitioners on the ground who also have and must have, and I fully endorse what Anne-Marie is saying there about the professional skills that are needed within the use of learning technology, greater awareness of copyright and IP, greater criticality in our choice of tools. And I know Sam's been on this journey as well. So Sam, do tell us more. I hope we can hear you now.
Yeah, so I've just done a CMALT bootcamp workshop, and some of the advice I gave people is look at the skills that you have, write down all the projects and things that you've been involved with, and then map it to the prospectus and see where you actually have the gaps. Where don't you have strong evidence to say, I can do this skill, I have supported the deployment of a technology, I understand the wider context. And that's where you need to sort of say, okay, this is where I need to now focus my energies on and develop myself as somebody who could become a certified member of ALT. And that's the advice I've been giving people in there. And I think, you know, that could really, really help create a whole, holistic, organic member of ALT.
And of course, at the heart of the CMALT are ALT's values, and I think that's definitely something that that is crucial.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Teresa, I think I agree with Anne-Marie and what Peter's saying. I think what is great, and actually it's really good having the people that we have in the room just now as well. I think it's really important for ALT, also to, you know, we provide CMALT and that's developing, and we've got the senior and the associate, which is great now. But also having people like you guys in the room, you know, people who are in those senior positions, who are doing that, who do understand the technology, who do understand the issues. And I think it's that kind of modelling to the sector as well. And I think what we've got to be careful of is not kind of othering senior management. And because it's all right for all of us here because we're all working really hard and it's all their fault because they don't understand. And I think it's much more nuanced than that. So I think that these conversations is a really important place to have these conversations and be bringing more people in. And to be,
cough loudly and put my hand
Yeah.
up a few times. I might be in that bunch.
Yeah, if I
Go
can
on.
just agree with Sheila there that I have a situation at the moment where actually my issue is pulling the reins back on one of our members of senior management who wants everything achieved in about 6 weeks instead of 6 months. So sometimes it isn't senior management holding the learning technologies back. It's actually, we have to get them to be a little bit realistic because they see something nice and shiny and want it now. And it's not just from my current role as a developer and the techie implementer, the time that takes, there's the time it takes to train staff in how to use it properly as well and get it adopted fully. Otherwise, it doesn't matter whether it's open source, commercial, whether you've spent thousands on it. If your staff aren't going to use it well, you might as well not have it in the first place.
Could I say a few words about research?
Yeah, it's only going to, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, the stand broke in the
I'll
back.
come round here. Come round here. You might just hear me, not see me, but that's okay. Right. Well, I was listening to the conversation just now and it was fantastic. And it reminded me of why I started my first major involvement with ALT, which was as the co-editor of Research and Learning Technology. And as I heard it, I thought, well, this is just information systems, the discipline from 1980s and 1990s. So how is that relevant to ALT? It will be relevant to CMALT, I guess, but particularly to people who are writing up their research or conducting research, which hopefully will be published in Research and Learning Technology. They can look beyond the usual suspects of literature and I'm putting in a plea to consult the information systems literature, where a lot of these things were looked at a very long time ago. And I'm not going to mention what it was, but one of the things that drove me to apply to be a co-editor for Research in Learning Technologies was seeing some of the same old taps that had been dragged through and thrown out of information systems being brought up as the new solution. So, and it doesn't matter what that was, but look at reference disciplines, look at reference literatures, and talk to me if you don't know what I mean. Okay.
I think that point is actually really strong, because one of the things that I often think that came out of this conference, and it's been there for the last couple of years, has been the respect of the importance of research and evaluation to the role of what we do, because there's so much ease in being able to pilot. A pilot is a safe space to go into. You throw stuff in there, you go and do it. The capacity to fail is quite easy, and it's a nice safe thing. It goes back to a little bit about the notion of always looking for the shiny things. But the actual research and evaluation aspect of it, I think, is the thing that actually challenges the role of the learning technologist more than anything else, because what it actually does is it breaks down some of that distinction between the us and them. So there is an us and them distinction in many institutions, and it is sometimes a professional services versus academic distinction. Sometimes it's a technologist versus, I hate to use the word Luddite, but the non-technologist distinctions. But what I've been really sort of interested to see here, and more so in the institution that I'm involved with now, is to look at the role of the learning technologist as a hybridized one, so that there is an aspect that we can respect and include in people's workload proper time to research, because research is not something that's an add-on at the end. It takes time to think, it takes time to challenge, it takes time to collaborate, it takes time to go through the whole publishing cycle. But and as Francis says, it actually takes time to find those cogent fields and actually apply those to different modes of learning. I think learning spaces is a really good example where that started to happen really well. So people have started to draw on space literature, design thinking, sort of wider cogent fields. But I think learning technology does sometimes tend to just go back to the old favorites. And I think that hybridized thing and giving people time to do that is a really critical thing.
I agree with you entirely, Peter. And I think if you don't have the space within your role to conduct research, and some institutions in the UK, that isn't really possible for professional services staff, slightly frowned upon in some places, I think. The idea of being research informed as part of your practice is still a core. So even if you can't
do your own evaluation, or I mean, I think you should be doing evaluation of anything you're doing, but even if you can't do research with a capital R, we should be always starting anything new we're doing by going back to the existing literature and looking for, you know, are we doing something new, or are we just repeating a mistake that's or something that's been done in another field? Because we've got to continue building upon the work that other people have done, not constantly repeating the same kind of activities. But I think we are spending quite a lot of time thinking about what a learning technologist is and all the different flavors that exist, and that's quite introspective. And I do think we need to look outside of ourselves and think about where structurally in institutions should we be inserted, whatever flavor we might be. And things like CMALT and particularly the legal and policy elements of the portfolio, I think are the spaces that push us to think about where in systemic processes in institutions should we be working? Should we be working in data protection? Should we be working in procurement? Should we? I believe yes, but that portfolio does push us to think about where we might fit in some of these institutional processes, whatever flavor we are, whether we're more instructionally or techie or whatever. And I think we need to maybe sometimes stop. We're not going to come up with an answer as to what the perfect learning technologist is, and I do worry that maybe we're not getting to some of this systemic change by doing that.
Something that came up in the session, something I've talked to other people about in the past, is when we're talking about us versus the academics, and a lot of us have gone through the fellowship of the HEA cycle, and the reason for doing that is so academics would take it seriously, say, look, we can tread in your shoes, we have got the same background as you. But then when it comes to something like CMALT, we're doing it for ourselves. And that was quite clear in the session that I've just done in conversations with other people. And I think it's a shame it has to be that way.
I'm kind of aware that we're taking up a lot of your time, and we haven't heard anything from the gentleman behind Sam here, or I haven't. So please come closer and give us some perspectives. We also have a question coming from Chris too, so perhaps we can try and fit both in. No, we're not hearing you very well, I'm afraid.
Okay, we'll do a quick shuffle.
Sorry.
I'll be quite brief because I've had plenty of opportunity to speak over the last couple of days. Going back to your question about key takeaways, I think one of mine is definitely the tension between wanting to go further in terms of our kind of pedagogical practices, rethink what we may want to do with technology to support learning and teaching, maybe even reimagine some of it, including some of the more critical aspects that were introduced across the keynotes. And on the other hand, the machinery, the policies and procedures, the bureaucracies of the institution, which don't always support what we might broadly call innovation, or even just change and development in our pedagogic practices. So a very kind of simple example, program approval and reapproval processes in most universities, which are at best coming around every 3 years, sometimes every 5 years, and which often don't, I won't say don't, but which often don't support anything more than marginal change. Have you updated the reading list? Have you updated your learning objectives? And I think we need to have institutional processes that support fluid innovation and support change, and aren't bogged down in orthodoxies of what learning and teaching should look like. So that would be my key takeaway.
That is a brilliant takeaway. Thank you so much for that. Chris, did you want to ask a question? Do you want to unmute?
Yes. Interestingly, when I attended the conference last year at Manchester, I actually watched the streamed sessions and went to the non-streamed ones, which is rather odd, I suppose. And same sort of thing when you're off site. You get a lot of information. Obviously, you see the keynotes and you see the streamed sessions, the ones that are in the main room. But there's a lot going on that's not streamed, or maybe not even commented on Twitter. So I wonder if there's anything there that you've picked up that might be worth sharing in the sessions that weren't, covered as well as some of the others were.
Well, it's kind of difficult, Chris, because there's so much. But I mean, I chaired one session that was very difficult, I suppose, to share. But it was actually Louise Drum did a session about using critical theory, theatre theory. And so we did improvisation, and she had 3 scenarios that she had some scripts and then they kind of improvised them. And it was really, really powerful, because there was one point in the room that so the idea was you were given there was a script that people read through once, and then everyone in the room, the next read through, could say stop, and they could come in and take over one of the characters. And there were points there where you could just see people going, oh my God, this is so like real life. I don't want to say anything, because I've been in this situation so many times before, and I've tried things, and that was really powerful. So I think there's a lot of things coming through the sessions, but I think that stuck with me. It's actually a really good way to, well, and actually I asked Louise, I wonder how that would work if you did that with maybe with some of the senior management, in terms of if they would even do that. But that was a really powerful thing, and I got a lot of people thinking about maybe just even the process of maybe writing some of those scripts, not actually enacting them. And that was really interesting.
Could I just make one comment?
And Frances, you were there as well.
I was there. Yeah, I think the comment on me, and it won't surprise you, was Frances Bell could improvise for hours. That was the comment about me. But the point that I wanted to make was that session would not have worked if it had been streamed.
No, that's true.
I think that's really an important point.
Absolutely.
To make.
Yeah.
No, what I really liked about some of the sessions that weren't streamed were and I'm a sort of person who quite likes the notion of learning through discomfort. Not incredibly discomfort, stone in the shoe kind of discomfort, rather than, but those kind of things, it's quite an uncomfortable thing to do, to put yourself out there. Self-promotion, Laurie Phipps from JISC and I ran a session around far future scenarios, and they were designed deliberately to be quite frighteningly dystopian, but frighteningly real in their kind of their structure. And it was about things like, well, we're going to become a single vendor institution, or we're going to be, every one of our programs is going to be about employability. And it actually, you could see people feeling in the session like, oh my God, this is happening at my institution. One person came up to us and said, oh, we know what institution you stole those from. And we're like, no, we just made them up. But that sense of discomfort is really quite important in some sessions, because it's very easy to get into a conference comfort zone. Here's what I did. Here's my methodology. Here's my findings. Let's have a 10-minute question session. How did I do it? And I think actually starting to get people to think about their practice by not getting them to just rehearse through a set of a script, if you will, is a really powerful thing. And I think you're right. Sometimes they don't work online, but if we take that on board and say, actually, maybe there are some sessions that we actually choose to deliberately put online that are actually designed to leverage the fact they're online. So they're not just a passive reception of knowledge, but they're actually saying we can leverage.
I think that's 2 really good examples. And I went to a third one on holographic lecturers, but it was using a speculative design methodology. And I think that's an interesting point, that the use of design thinking or creative thinking or speculative methods I'm seeing more of that within our field as a whole, and it's nice to see that coming through in some of the conference presentations. As you say, it's not just here's the thing I did and these were the learnings, but actually what can we usefully create together by using the fact that we're all together in this one place. It's a rare opportunity for us, and how can we use the power of that? I think we should do more of that, right?
So Richard, I'm kind of aware that your folks have probably not had lunch. Is that true?
I was just going to make that point now, that we probably need to let these good folks go and grab something whilst there's still some food left over in the...
Absolutely. But I couldn't thank you enough for a really rich discussion there. And I kind of feel we've only managed to give you a few minutes on mic, and we could talk all night. But people have to eat. And I'm sure you're ready for a break. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your contributions. And Chris and Scott, thank you so much too. Those of us off-site have the luxury of carrying on the conversation once you on-site guys have gone to lunch. So thank you all very much. I'll switch the recording off now.